Hey everyone, Pastor Kyle here again with another video. Today we're going to look at Goodness of God. Now I'm sending you a PDF of the intro and some of the chords so you have a visual of that. Don't be too freaked out by the intro. There's a lot of syncopation. That means there's a lot of 16th notes and 8th notes tied to each other. Don't let that freak you out. But try to let this be a guide to help you just get some of the chords and the rhythm and the notes. So if you don't play it exactly like this is fine. But Goodness of God is a little bit tricky because the intro starts on the and of 3. So you would count 1, 2, 3. Now I'm adding a lot of movement in there that I would normally play. The basic structure of the song is a G chord. G, and then I'm adding a little rhythm here, and then adding some more movement. And then the melody takes over. Now that moves down in a syncopated rhythm, you could go. But I tend to want to keep the bass a little more steady so we know where the syncopation is. So I went from a D sus here to a regular D chord, which you can do there. So basically the structure of the chord is D sus, D. The melody would be so I'm trying to meld both the chord rhythm and the melody while adding a little bit of movement in there that's maybe not part of the melodic structure, like in that second measure. And at the end on that D chord. Let me play it one more time for you. Work on it, but when we're counting this off, if we're going to play just the chords, 1, 2, 3, I love you, Lord. So the melody comes in on the and of 3. If you're going to play the intro, we'll play it, but we have to think of the counting in. It's the and of 3. So it's 1, 2, 3. So that's kind of the intro. That's how I would play it. Feel free to simplify it or just kind of pick out the melody or just play through the chords if you want. But I wrote this out in case you want some more ideas for kind of a fuller context of the intro. Now let's look at the chords. Throughout the song there's basically 6 chords, and I have those listed for you in the PDF. There's the G chord, the C chord, there's the D over F sharp, E minor 7. We've talked about this before, the E minor 7. Whenever you have a minor 7 chord, oftentimes you can think of it as a regular triad. In this case it'd be a G triad with E in the bass. And we had that same chord in another song that we did in Another in the Fire. So it's the exact same chord structure. It's the G chord with E in the bass. Now we have a D4, which would be like a D sus 4. So let's take a look at that. A regular D chord would be like this in root position. The third, if it's suspended up to the 4th, is called a sus 4. Sometimes you can call it a 4. If it's an add 4, that means you're probably going to add the 4 to the 3rd, but don't worry about that. Think of it as like a regular sus 4 that you'd play. So the 3rd is suspended, that's why it's called a sus, is suspended up to the 4th note. The root and the 5th stay the same, but that 3rd note is suspended up to the 4th. Now regardless of where you play it, that 3rd is suspended up. So if I'm playing my D in root position, the 3rd is suspended up. the third note in this case is in the middle. If I'm playing a D chord in first inversion, the third is my bottom note. So it's still going to move, but now the bottom note, which is the third, is going to suspend up. The fifth and the root of the note of the chord is going to stay the same. And then if I resolve it, it resolves back down to that third note. Now if I play it in second inversion, like I'm going to be playing it in this song, I have my fifth on the bottom, root, D, and then the third here, F sharp. So regardless of where that F sharp is, regardless of where that third is, it's going to suspend up. So now it's my top note that's going to suspend up. And if I resolve it, going back down here. One more thing I want to look at before we get to the song is a typical walk down. Now this is, you're going to find this kind of walk down in other songs, and I want to explain it because typically when I play a walk down, the bass note moves down. So you got your 1 chord, which would be G, steps down to your 6 chord in this case, which would be the E minor chord. But look what happens in the right hand. I have my G chord, I'm stepping down to my D with F sharp in the bass. I'm going to my E minor 7, but basically in my right hand I'm going back up to my G chord. I'm stepping down in the left hand, but I'm going back to my G chord. So if I look at my right hand alone, it's like I'm playing G, D, G, but I'm continuing to move down in my left hand, so it sounds like this. Okay, so there again, we're looking at the relationship between the chords, not just thinking of chord to chord to chord. But if I'm doing a walk down, I'm thinking, in my mind, what I'm thinking is I'm going to that G chord, down to my D chord, but I'm coming back up to my G chord in my right hand while I continue down to the E in my left hand, okay? And the relationship between all of our chords, like the G chord going to a C chord, I keep my G the same, and I just move the notes that I need to get to my C chord. My G chord that steps down to D, that D is the common chord tone. So in the G chord I have a D, and in my D chord I have a D. So I'm just going to use those outer notes and move them down to the F sharp, down to the A, and keep the D where it's supposed to be. And in my E minor 7, just like the walk down, and in fact I usually will go to that walk down when I'm going from that D to the E minor, I'm going back to a G chord in my right hand, okay? Then I have my D sus. Now the chord that we haven't talked about yet is that G over B. It's basically just a G chord with B in the bass. So the full song, I'm going to do it with the intro, and I'm just going to run through just kind of verse, chorus, verse, and then get to maybe the chorus, but then do the bridge so you kind of hear the context of the whole song. So let me play with the intro. So I'm counting 1, 2, 3. Your mercy never fails me. All my days I've been held in your hands. From the moment that I wake up until I lay my head, there's that walk down, I will sing of the goodness of God. Going to the chorus. All my life you have been faithful. All my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, I will sing of the goodness of God. So that would be the verse part, the chorus. Verse 2 would be the same format as verse 1. Let's look at the bridge. I'm going to start with G with B in the bass. Sometimes when people are moving, they don't realize that they can move stepwise. You know, sometimes people will play a G with B in the bass and play like a C down here and go to a D up here. But if you look at the bass notes, it's just going B, C, D. It's stepping up. So take advantage of that. Step up where the bass notes are stepping up. Don't jump all around. Keep in context of where you are and where you're moving to. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. With my life laid down, I'm surrendered now. I'll give you everything. There's my E minor 7, which is the same as my G chord, just with a E in the bass. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Then it would go back to the chorus. And then we have the tag ending. So I think that means that the first time to do it, I will sing of the goodness of God. I will sing of the goodness of God. Then it goes back to tag 1. I will sing of the goodness of God. So that was the basic structure, the basic chords with an intro. Happy practicing and stay safe.